From what you've seen at this point, it's way early. I ain't gonna hold you to this, but from
Yeah,
what you've seen from this point so far, would you have Louisville among your Final Four slash national title contenders?
not not in the final four, but let me tell you why. Because I think the top is really, really good.
Welcome to the CL Brown Show. I am your host, CL Brown, columnist with the Louisville Courier-Journal. On this episode of the show, I'm welcoming my former colleague at ESPN, college basketball reporter extraordinaire, Myron Medcalf. Now, this is going to be a little bit different because I'm not quite ranting this week. I'm actually, this is like a coronation, if you will, for Kentucky football after the announcement that they have hired Will Stein as their next head coach to replace Mark Stoops. Of course, this was like a whirlwind this weekend. You have the Cats losing to U of L 41 to nothing in the Governor's Cup game. Pretty pretty embarrassing showing, which got the snowball rolling downhill. Mark Stoops was fired thereafter, probably sometime on Sunday evening. The official announcement came Monday, and athletic director Mitch Barnhart didn't waste any time making his move to get Will Stein, who was, well, he's going to finish serving out his time as the offensive coordinator at Oregon. They are set to make the college football playoff when the 12-team field is announced sometime after the championship games this weekend. So it's a home run hire. I feel like they're Will Stein, to me, if they couldn't get John Sumrall, which he ended up at Florida, Will Stein was the next best candidate. He is A hire for sure. The only thing that's not on his resume right now is he hadn't been a head coach before, so we don't know exactly how that will go. But we do know that he has had great success as an offensive coordinator, both during his time at UTSA, Texas San Antonio, for those who don't know who I'm talking about, and his time at Oregon. He's really shown a strength in developing quarterbacks. He worked with Bo Nix, who turned him into a first round pick for the Denver Broncos in the 2024 draft. He worked with Dylan Gabriel, who had to kind of rehab his image after his time at Oklahoma. I think he was farther down on NFL scouts' radar, but he went to Oregon. Will Stein kind of cleaned up his game. He ended up being the third round pick for the Cleveland Browns. And his work this year with Dante Moore. So his 3 years in Oregon, he's had a different quarterback every year. Every year, he's turned them into a formidable player. Although this year's offense isn't as pass happy as those past two have been, this one has probably a stronger running game than he's had his first 2 years. And this goes to how he coaches. Will Stein isn't stuck on, I got to pass the ball. They're averaging more than 200 yards rushing per game. They are 14th in the nation as a rushing offense this season. So Will Stein is definitely about adjusting to his personnel and getting the job done. And so if you want to listen to the interview I did with Will Stein, it's back on the August 7th, 2004 episode of the CL Brown Show. We cover a lot of ground, including some of his major coaching influences. We talk about his time at the University of Louisville playing for Coach Charlie Strong and also playing for quarterbacks coach Jeff Brom, his first season, his redshirt season under former coach Steve Cragthorpe. So it's a wide-ranging interview. It's worth a listen if you want to kind of get an insight into the new UK coach. And I'll leave it on just it's going to be very interesting. Will Stein grew up a Kentucky fan. His dad played at Kentucky in the 80s. Was kind of a similar story as Will. Matt Stein was a walk-on who earned a scholarship at UK during that time. Will Stein wanted to go to UK. They didn't have, they didn't make any offer to him. They didn't say he could come as a preferred walk-on, anything like that. He ends up going to U of L after, I should fail to mention, after a great career at Trinity High School in Louisville. So he goes to U of L, walks on, earns a scholarship under Charlie Strong, really learns a lot, blossoms, ends up being a graduate assistant under Charlie Strong and stayed there when Petrino came and Charlie went to Texas. Then he followed Strong staff to Texas. So he's kind of been in the pipeline for a minute, and now he gets his opportunity. He is a great person. Everybody I've ever talked to about Will loves the guy. That's why it's gonna be real interesting. I know a lot of U of L fans who will wish him success all but for that one Governor's Cup game every year because he's that great of a person. So that's it for the sound off. More like a Stein off. Um, but let's move on to this interview. Now, I'd like to welcome to the show Myron Medcalf, my man, 50 grand, former colleague, college basketball reporter extraordinaire. What's up, Myron?
Good, man. Good, man. Glad to be on with you, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, let's jump right into this big matchup, ACC SEC Challenge. Louisville is traveling to Arkansas. Some attention will certainly be on Kenny Payne, the former coach at U of L and member of 1986 national championship team as associate head coach for Arkansas. He stays out of the spotlight, so I don't see any way that he gets into this narrative where he says something crazy or does something crazy where it's about him versus Louisville. But that's kind of a side note to the matchup. But how do you see this game? Just in a larger scope of Louisville's season.
Well, I mean, I think you got three players, three freshmen, all projected to be first round picks. Darius Acuff Jr., Malik Thomas, Michael Brown Jr. So, I mean, you're talking about three of the best freshmen in the country, best players in the country. And I think it really comes down to them. I mean, Darius Acuff has been incredible, this season, and because we have such a stacked freshman class between what Boozer is doing at Duke and AJ DeBonta and Caleb Wilson, and we haven't even seen Darren Peterson really yet.
Yeah.
I think guys like him have maybe been like a little overshadowed, but he's been legit. And Malik Thomas has been really tough as well. The 3-point shooting hasn't been great, but everything else has been for him. And then everybody saw what happened when Louisville and Kentucky faced off, and Michael Brown Jr. just kind of was
Went
unguardable
wild. Yeah.
in that game. So, like, he's one of those dudes where there aren't a lot of individual defenders at this level who can stay in front of him and can kind of stick him. So, I think it's going to be a really good matchup for especially fans in our sport, college basketball, but also the fans who are like, hey, maybe my favorite NBA team might get one of these guys.
Yeah, yeah. So Mikhail Brown Jr., his when they played Kansas in the exhibition game, Peterson stole the show. I mean, Mikhail basically couldn't buy a shot. He had layups, reverse layups going in and out, that kind of thing. Really struggled. Stayed after that game, after we come out of the press conference and everything. We went back on the court, saw him shooting to kind of I guess mentally get back into it real quick and bounce back. But I bring up that game in particular because that was kind of a marquee matchup with him and Darren Peterson. Um, to say that I'm looking to see what Brown does in terms of the spotlight. Obviously, he had the huge game against Kentucky that you mentioned, and stepped up when the spotlight was the brightest. So I wonder if we're going to see that. I hope so. Like I want to see a pattern of consistency from him in that regard. What do you think about this matchup in terms of Pat Kelsey when they beat UK? Kind of exercise the demons, so to speak, that Kentucky had got the best of Louisville, even in some years where it seemed to me that Louisville had the better team, and it was like Kentucky just had their number. So he got rid of that. I'm looking at John Calipari specifically, who was responsible for most of those years where UK came out on top. How big do you think it'd be for Louisville for Pat Kelsey to beat John Calipari?
I mean, you always want to beat one of the legends, if you can, and Cal is still that. in this game. I mean, one of the few active coaches with a national championship. Um, so yeah, I think that would say a lot for Pat Kelsey. I don't think Pat Kelsey has to prove anything though. I think he's already done that. Like, I don't think there are any doubts about what he can do at this level. I don't think there are any doubts about that last year. He's already restored the program. He's restored the program's name, which, the Kenny Payne era was difficult. And then before that, all the stuff that came with Pitino after Pitino, like it was a rocky decade for Louisville basketball that I think Pat Kelsey has kind of changed the national image and made Louisville a powerhouse again. So you beat a guy like Cal, and I think certainly that kind of extends that narrative. But I don't think Pat Kelsey is in the he has something every time he plays that he's got to prove he belongs or prove that he can elevate Louisville back into sort of the upper echelon of college basketball. He's done that.
Yeah.
Now it's like you got a national championship team or not. I think that's kind of what he's playing for.
Yeah, yeah, which actually was going to be my next question for you. From what you've seen at this point, it's way early. I ain't gonna hold you to this, but from
Yeah.
what you've seen from this point so far, would you have Louisville among your Final Four slash national title contenders?
Not not in the final four, but let me tell you why. Because I think the top is really, really good. Like,
Mm,
I think when you talk Michigan, when you talk Purdue, when you talk Arizona that just went to UConn,
yeah,
got a true road win over UConn. When you talk UConn, that's now healthy, and they got wins now over BYU, beat Illinois by double digits. When you talk Duke, Cameron Boozer's numbers are better than Cooper Flagg's numbers were.
mm,
So there's some teams at the top where it's like, okay, I think maybe those teams have a chance to separate themselves, but I think Louisville's in that next tier. So it's certainly possible. Anytime you have a young star that you're kind of turning to, anything's possible. What I thought was, what they did against Kentucky was certainly a message, right?
yeah,
Just the way I thought they dominated Kentucky for that entire game. Now you come out against Arkansas, which I also think is a really good team. If you dominate this team, I think now the conversation changes about Louisville, and you say, okay, do you start to think of them as maybe something more than kind of how we've seen them so far?
yeah. Now that was well reasoned, Myron,
Yeah.
and I understand you, but I'm preparing you for the hate. You might get
But
an email or a tweet or something like, "What's wrong with this guy?"
I mean, but what to me again? There's nothing wrong with being to me in that next tier, right?
Yeah.
I don't think
Oh, you're right. There's nothing wrong with
for
it.
me personally though. Like again, I'm coming off players era where I just saw a Michigan team that looks like I'd bet on them right now to win the national championship. I'm seeing Cameron Boozer's numbers look like, I don't know. We haven't seen something like this in a long time.
Yeah.
Iowa State's playing great. I think Louisville's it can be in the conversation. If they beat Arkansas, then I think that's a different conversation.
Yeah, yeah. True road game. This is their
Yes.
kind of first
This is where you make
experience
a
in that
statement.
environment. Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. Well, let's switch gears to talk about Kentucky basketball. Certainly, now this is being taped just for the listeners. This is being taped before the Carolina game, so we're going to set that result aside, not knowing. But what do you think about just the makeup of this unit? Now, Jalen Lowe, his health status, his shoulder, assuming he'll be back in the lineup, I'm still gonna leave Jaden Quaintance off the table because with that coming back from an ACL, it hadn't been a year yet. I wrote a few weeks ago that he should just sit out the season to get fully healthy. But with Lowe back in the lineup, how good do you think this Kentucky team can be?
Still don't know. I mean, Jaden Quains, I think we haven't heard a lot about him since, Mark Pope said he would play this season. So I do think it's hard to kind of understand where he may fit in if he comes back. Jalen Lowe is obviously was one of the biggest gets in the transfer portal. I mean, the pieces are there to be a really good team. You know, I think that's clear. I think what I saw against Louisville and what I saw against Michigan State is a Kentucky team that's not tough enough.
Mm,
Like they got punched in the face in those games.
yeah.
Like they don't have anybody who will fight you after the game in the alley, right? And I think if you look at the best teams at Kentucky, like really, if you look at, and I always bring up Tyler Ulis's Kentucky teams, and just like those teams had an edge to
Yeah.
them. And I think that Michigan State game, yes, Michigan State was shooting the lights out, and they had never done that
Yeah.
up until the Kentucky game. At the same time, there were putbacks and rebound opportunities where Kentucky just said, "You got it,"
Mm,
you know. And I haven't seen that from a Kentucky team
yeah.
in a long time, where I felt like, "Oh, y'all got punked, and you didn't seem to care
Mm,
as much." Okay, Louisville, that's your biggest rival. Fine, they're highly skilled, but I need to see more fight. So I
yeah.
mean, to me, the pieces and personnel may be there. Jalen Lowe, I think Denzel Aberdeen, whatever they paid him, it wasn't enough because
Mm,
he could really save the season, I think, for Kentucky. Uh, um, and they got a couple of tough matchups, couple of tough matchups in December
yeah.
that I think will say a lot about what Kentucky is. But the biggest fear of a Kentucky fan should be this team doesn't get bullied the way that they got bullied against Michigan State, the way that they got bullied against Louisville. And then when you hear Mark Pope say, "Hey, there's stuff happening in the locker room that I can't talk about," it makes you feel
Yeah.
like got issues beyond what we're seeing on the court.
I'm still wondering both why he made that statement and
Right.
if you're not going to fully explain, we went through XYZ, because you leave a void for people to fill in. They're going to fill it in, and 99% of the stuff is going to be junk, but it's just going to filter out there, and the whole narrative of the season almost gets changed. I want to ask you specifically about Otega Owe.
Yeah.
Um, he had a great close to last season. He was like the finisher for that team, a couple of late baskets against Oklahoma to win the game. Was clutch performer when they went over Duke early last season. But this year he hasn't come out with the same kind of I don't know what it is about him. I just feel like something is off. Some people will point to he went to get feedback from the NBA, and maybe he's trying too hard to appease whatever information he got. I don't know what it is, but can this team reach its potential with all the pieces they have if Ortega doesn't reach what he was last season? What do you think?
Absolutely, absolutely not. I mean, he's the preseason SEC Player of the Year. Like, look at all those dudes in the SEC. Alex
Hmm.
Condit, like all these talented players in the SEC, and he was voted SEC Player of the Year for a reason. You know, I do think part of it is when you go get that feedback, when you see yourself as someone who has to prove a point, that can change the way guys play. He's also just not hitting shots that he hit last year.
Yeah.
Like some of those threes aren't falling the way they were a year ago, and I don't think this team has come together yet, and they still could. But I mean, their best player to me has been Colin Chandler. I mean, that's been the guy. Like, if you look what happens in the Michigan State game, Tom Izzo's just like, I'm gonna dare everybody else who's not him to try to outscore us, and they couldn't do it. So I think Ortega, yes, he has to be good, but more importantly, I think this group just has to come together and figure out kind of who they are. Like, here's the problem with the transfer portal, and I mean this respectfully when I say this about these players. The thing that people forget when you get a John Wall, a Carl Anthony Towns, and Anthony Davis, when you get a De'Aaron Fox, guys like that, those dudes have been famous since their freshman, sophomore years of high school.
Yeah.
They've been in a national spotlight since they were freshmen, sophomores in high school. They played in the Jordan Brand game, McDonald's All American game. They have been in the spotlight for years. And then they get to this level and they understand the moment and they can handle it, right? Because they've been under that pressure for years.
Mm.
The reality is, there are a lot of guys who are going to put on a Kentucky uniform for the first time who have never had that kind of pressure. They didn't face that in high school. They didn't have it at whatever school they were at before Kentucky. And I think that's a bigger adjustment than people realize in the portal. We've seen this happen at multiple schools: Kansas, North Carolina, Kentucky. We've seen a bunch of dudes who were good before they got to those schools, and then they showed up to those schools, and it was like, well, wait a minute, this is a different thing. People got to realize this is the first time some of these guys have been in the national spotlight, and there's a certain pressure that comes with that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that may be contributing to some of the chaos we're seeing a little bit with this Kentucky team. Again, Mark Pope won't tell us what it is, but it's something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whatever it is, it's not good because we're seeing the result on the court. So I just wonder about the chemistry of this group. Otege Owe has to just hit shots. That's what he did last year. Um, but they also got to find like a sense of togetherness that they just haven't had yet.
Yeah, that's the great point about the spotlight that I've never heard anybody really bring up in the way that you just did. I'll close on Kentucky with this question about Mark Pope. Now obviously last year was a honeymoon year. Nobody knew what to expect. They got some upsets early. Everybody was much better than a lot of people probably thought it would be. This is his first time dealing with any kind of real kind of adversity, if you will, as a head coach. How do you see him coming out of this? And is there anything from his past, BYU or Utah Valley, that you know of that would that would give confidence to Kentucky fans that he can navigate through all this?
I think he's hard to rattle. I mean, I covered BYU games when he was there. I think Mark Pope was just a hard dude to rattle, which is why the Louisville game and the Michigan State game just seemed so out of character for him. He just seemed so down. And listen, coaches get down. I don't know that anybody wants to see their head coach in that state in November, though. He seemed lost. And I think here's the challenge with a Mark Pope, who I think he is a really good coach. He's extremely smart. Like maybe one of the smartest coaches in basketball, just in terms of who he is. This guy went to medical school, right? This is a guy who didn't need basketball, could be doing a lot of other things.
Yeah,
The challenge, CL, sometimes in those moments, people don't want to hear the Rocky speech. Like they don't want to hear the TED talk, if you will. And I don't think Mark Pope was doing that intentionally. It's just the way he is. He's just a really smart dude. Sometimes people just want to hear you say, that wasn't good enough, right? And just kind of like call it out. People want to hear you say, yeah, we got issues in the locker room, but we're going to fix them. Not this whole things have happened mysteriously before the game and at the trajectory of like, what are you talking about? And I think that to me is kind of what happened after the Michigan State game and the Louisville game. People were confused about what's going on. But I don't think you can rattle Mark Pope. Like, I don't think that's the kind of guy he is. Um, and I do think they'll figure it out. But I question if they have the right personnel. And I think that to me is what we've seen the first month. Not good players. They have good players, but do they have the right fit for everybody? I think that remains to be seen.
yeah, yeah, indeed. Well, I'll let you go on this last question concerning the freshman class as a whole in college basketball. This is the best freshman class since when, in your opinion? Like, what would you say is comparable to what we're seeing?
I'm trying to figure it out, man, because I don't know the last time we've seen this depth in the freshman class. Like, if you're an NBA team and, it's like if you have a chance to be in like the play in or the tank. Like, I think teams are gonna tank, man. I think there's gonna be a whole lot of teams that could be like those 7, 8, 9, 10 seeds because there's just so much depth, man.
Yeah,
Like there's a world where Cameron Boozer, who statistically right now is better than Zion Williamson, Anthony Davis, Cooper Flag. Like if you just look at some of the offensive rating numbers,
mhm,
where he might be the third or fourth pick in this draft.
yeah,
And like that's the kind of draft we're looking at, man. And I don't know if we've ever seen anything like it. So it's just been fun to watch. And I think this is the first time I feel like college basketball is alive again for the country
mhm,
since the pandemic. We had the Zion Williamson year, and then we had a bunch of international guys, overtime, elite, G League,
yeah.
pandemic. But this year it feels like college basketball on the men's side is back.
Indeed, and I'm sure you're loving it with as many games as you get out to, and as much as we see you on the sidelines. But I appreciate you lending me your insight today, Myron, and good luck to you going forward in this season.
Appreciate it, man.
And now it's time for pickup lines. This is the last week of well, technically it's the postseason now, but it's the last week before bowls actually start. Championship week in college football. And I'm going to try and predict the outcomes against the spread for the Power Four Conference championship games. Let's start with the ACC. Duke and Virginia. The Cavaliers are a 3.5 point favorite at the game in Charlotte. A lot of people are shaking their head just knowing that Duke got into this game. It was the Blue Devils were part of what was it, a four-way tie at 6-2 in the ACC, um, and they got the tie-breaking win. Which them going to the ACC title game with 5 losses overall may be the impetus to changing the tie-breaking rules. Maybe moving forward, the ACC looks at the highest rated team in the college football playoff rankings getting a shot, and in that case, that would be Miami and Virginia, which this season would go volumes to making sure the ACC gets a team in. Because if Duke wins this game, there is a chance, and I don't know how high a percentage chance it is, but there's a chance that they would not get a bid to the college football playoff. A lot of people think it is based on it's an automatic bid for the ACC. It is not. They take the 5 highest ranked conference champions. Those are the teams that get the automatic bids. And if Duke wins, there's a chance that they would not be in that top 25 of the college football playoff rankings. So, but that's we'll see how that plays out if it plays out. That's neither here nor there for pickup lines. I'm supposed to pick the winner against the spread, and I'm going to stick with the Wahoos. They beat Duke during the regular season 34-17. I think they're just clearly the better team in this situation. Duke does have some talent, and as I've done this throughout the season, I've picked Duke a few times against teams I felt they were better than, like Illinois early in the season, but they just seem to have a turnover problem that plagues them. So, going with the Wahoos. Let's move to the Big Ten championship, where Ohio State is a 4.5 point favorite against Indiana. This is one of those things where I feel like the experience of Ohio State as a program, as a culture, as the defending national champion, they have been there before, many, many, many times over. This game is not a big deal. It is a big deal, of course, but it's not a big deal. You understand what I'm saying? For the Buckeyes, because they've been in this position before. Indiana has not, they ain't been nowhere near this position in terms of playing for the Big Ten championship and or being number 2 in the country for that matter. Even though Kurt Signetti has brought a totally different air to IU football, I got to go with the Buckeyes to cover because I just think at the end of the day, the spotlight is going to be too big for the Hoosiers to handle in this situation. Let's move on to the SEC championship down in Atlanta, where Georgia is a 2.5 point favorite against Alabama. They keep doing this to Bama. They keep doing this in the Georgia Alabama matchups. The last 7 games that Georgia has been favored, it's not 7 in a row. I'm saying 7 overall games in this series going back to the late 90s that Georgia has been the favorite. Alabama has covered 6 of those games, 6-1, and one outright in those games. 6-1 against the spread against Georgia when they are underdogs. I cannot go against that. Roll Tide. They beat them earlier this season. They beat them last season. So Kirby Smart's 2-0 against Kalen DeBoer in terms of the head coaching matchups. And I'm going to stick with the Tide until the Dogs prove that they can win this game. And I feel like Georgia's a better team, has, well, at least closed out the season as the better team. And they should win this game. I believe that's why they are favored. They are looking to be the better team. But sometimes you have a nemesis that just got your number. All right, we'll close out with the Big 12 championship game where Texas Tech is a big 12.5 point favorite over BYU. Um, there's a chance that both of these teams will get in the uh, the college football playoff regardless of the outcome. Texas Tech did win the regular season matchup against BYU 29-7. That game was in Lubbock. I expect it to be a much tighter game than that game was. I think BYU just kind of got overwhelmed on the road in that instance. So I'm still taking Texas Tech to win this game, but I think I'm going to go with the underdog BYU Cougars to cover. So that will do it for pickup lines. That'll do it for another episode of the CL Brown Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please click on those follow buttons to subscribe. If you're watching live on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave a 5-star review if you are so inclined. It's Christmas season now, officially, right? So we need more love in this world. So I thank you for tuning in. You can catch my columns at courier-journal.com or sit back, relax, and catch a new episode when it drops on Wednesday. And again, just a side note, you can go back if you want to listen to the Will Stein interview on the CL Brown Show podcast. That is going back to August 7th, 2024. You will find it there if you scroll back. Thank you for tuning in.